folks, Dan the Toon Keeper here, and welcome to another episode of Toon Chest, or more specifically, another Toon Chest Public Domain-a-thon episode. And with that, we continue coverage of select noteworthy 1928 release cartoons that have entered the public domain, if not already, as of January 1, 2024. So if you remember the end of my last video, I actually did go over the other two cartoons that I will be covering on this year's public domain-a-thon beyond Fiery Fireman. And, well, this is where I would joke about how obscure it is that I would be covering Steamboat Willie on a 1928 themed marathon series type video, whatever, because I spent the first 2 minutes of my last video rubbing this in Disney space, essentially. So, I'm just gonna cut to the chase here. There actually was an attempt at a sound cartoon that predated Steamboat Willie in production, but released afterwards. And that cartoon short comes from a little-known studio that I actually covered on Toon Chest before, Van Beuren Studios. And the short title the title of the short we're going to be covering is specifically called Dinner Time. So Dinner Time was fully released on December 17, 1928, at least as per Graham Webb's book. And with that, the short has made the cutoff for having entered public domain as of, well, January 1, 2024, if not already. Having said that, though, anyone who knows anything about Van Beuren cartoons in general knows that the copyright situation was a huge mess after the original studio's closure. So much so that it's very probable that the vast majority, if not all of the original Van Beuren shorts, are in public domain long at this point, in fact. But even then, I mean, I've also come across flyers that have suggested otherwise, posting other flyers too. Most notably, of course, I believe it's on Cartoon Research, I came across a flyer that's seemed to have implied that Screen Gems, yes, that Screen Gems, purchased the rights to the Aesop Fables, the Cubby Bears, and the Human Tom and Jerry that predated the MGM Tom and Jerry's by 10 years about. Yeah, those cartoons apparently were purchased by Screen Gems at some point. I mean, I understand a lot of a lot of companies were buying up cartoons to show on TV and all that in the mid-50s onwards. I mean, that's how Paramount lost the rights to a lot of their cartoons to UM&M and all that, but history of all that aside, yeah, with Van Beuren shorts, I mean, having come across that flyer just raised so many more questions and answered them, especially when you consider how consistent Screen Gems was in renewing the copyrights for, well, the original Charles Mintz Screen Gems animation studio cartoons. For the sake of simplicity, I think I'm going to continue working under the assumption, unless somebody says otherwise or I'm proven otherwise, or let me know in the comments below if anyone has more information that connects to that flyer from Screen Gems. Yeah, I'm just going to continue working under the assumption that the entire Van Beuren cartoon library is in public domain. Because after all, I mean, if it wasn't, I mean, how would we have been able to get sets like these so, well, relatively easy? I would highly, highly suggest buying these sets on Thunderbeam if you can. It's, yeah, definitely worth your money, and of course it's, well, animation history and the best presentation of these cartoons that you can get. We are getting off track here. Let's get back to Dinner Time. Yeah, Dinner Time. As I mentioned before, it was fully released on December 17, 1928. However, it actually had a limited screening back in September 1928, 2 months before Steamboat Willie rocked the world. And one of the attendees of said limited screening was none other than Walt Disney himself. And as per Mike Barrier's book, Walt himself described Dinner Time scornfully as, and I quote, "a lot of racket and nothing else. It merely had an orchestra playing and adding some noises." So yeah, pretty straightforward and a fair indicator that Walt wasn't impressed with Dinner Time. Although I wouldn't be surprised if it provided Walt with a confidence booster with what he was embarking with on Steamboat Willie. But mind you, though, that Walt himself actually was a fan of the Aesop Fable series. I'm not joking. Again, as per Mike Barrier's book, Walt, even as late as 1930, stated that my ambition was to be able to make cartoons as good as the Aesop Fable series. So yeah, that says quite a. That makes his comments at dinner time say quite a lot in that front, and it also explains a lot of things too, with the creation of Mickey Mouse, arguably. You can argue that Mickey didn't exactly fall out of the sky. But for now, the question remains, would you agree with Walt's statement on dinner time, or do you think it's an underrated masterpiece, and that this should have been the sound film that got the attention and not Steamboat Willie? Well, I guess there's only one way to find out, but, well, let's watch the film, shall we? Right now. Back when Paul Terry and Van Beuren were still together. Because as you know, in 1930, the two would split in different directions. Van Buren's studio would only last another 6 years, while Paul Terry's own studio would last another 40 years. And unfortunately, part of why he survived, or his studio survived that long, was because, you've seen the production values on the Terry tunes. Basically, a 1940 or a 1950 cartoon could look like it was made in the late 30s. Like that. That's a type of lagging in production values at the Terry Toon studio itself. I'm not talking about Van Buren Studios at this point. And yeah, I think I'm starting to see what Walt's talking about when just with his statement. It's entertaining, entertainingly bad. Like the sound effects seem like muffled. I think that's a good way to put it. And just random. And out of sync. I know it was hard in the early days to get sound fully right, but it's definitely notable here. See, not even a glass breaking, it's just... Or if it was very muffled. Continued laughing for like half a second after he closed his mouth. Such emotional dialogue. Yeah, I think that's a good. I think how I was trying to say it before was definitely my impressions with how the sound was handled in this. There's definitely not enough emphasis. It seems like the volume for the sound effects is lower than the background music, if that makes sense. I mind you, I am no sound producer. The behind the scenes stuff. I'm not sure exactly how it works. But it just my observation is. Even some of the stuff that should make an impact, it just doesn't. It's so chaotic. Oh my sweet bejeebus. Oh yeah, there's so much sound going on, but you just don't know where's the impact supposed to be focused on. More out of sync. It definitely, it definitely looks like it was made to be silent originally. Or maybe, yeah, I kind of say that half joking, or I'm half guessing here on whether it was supposed to be made silent originally or not, because without the sound, one could easily mistake it as a silent film, because they can get away with this a lot easier in it, but with sound, there's just, like, you can barely hear them fighting. It's just muffled drum rolls. And I think I hear a cat in the background. Freaking goodness, it's so chaotic. And yeah, that's and that, folks, was Dinner Time. And yeah, I don't think it takes a detective to realize why Dinner Time didn't make a big splash, so to speak, with its, well, limited audience before Steamboat Willie took off in November. While I would generally agree with Walt, another issue I think is that, I mean, it's kind of a weird thing to say for Dinner Time, like, especially any Van Beuren cartoon in general, whether it's during the pre-1930 era or not, is that this was kind of an overly ambitious cartoon to make your first sound cartoon with, because if you think about with Steamboat Willie, it's a far easier cartoon to test or to work on sound with, or early sound with, I should say. But I don't know, I think the problem was that with Dinner Time, it was way too chaotic to really try to attempt the first sound cartoon with. Like, I think what should have happened was the Van Beuren Studios should have probably tried for maybe a simpler cartoon, especially in the second half of Dinner Time. There was so much going on that there's just sound and mumbling, and everything was just so muffled. It was entertaining. It wasn't a good film. In fact, I would give Dinner Time a C. I mean, it almost makes it into the B range, but at the end of the day, I mean, yeah, it really isn't good. But I'll give Dinner Time this, and well, any Van Beuren cartoon of the late 20s this. I mean, even though I gave this a C, I mean, I would vastly take a short like Dinner Time, which was an honest effort to try and to integrate sound and film, an early attempt. I would take a Van Beuren short that is endearingly bad or endearingly not good per se, rather than a Van Beuren short that was trying to be like Disney, as with the previous Van Beuren short I covered here in Toon Chest. Yeah, so that's my general opinion of Dinner Time. Stick around for one more Public Domain-a-thon Toon Chest episode, and yeah, look forward to Steamboat Willie next time. See ya, folks!